Hi everyone, we're into lesson 5.3 of Unity Basics of Theatre. We're going to be looking at how to animate things in this scene. Something very simple, something like, well, we're just going to make our treads move apart on an animation, which we can do things with later when we start to build controls in. And that's very typical of the sort of thing you might need to do. Is basically things need to rotate, to open, or things might need to fly in and out. So that's a simple movement on animation. So that's literally all we're going to do. Also, I did promise in the last lesson I'd figure out why there's so much fog. It wasn't until literally as I stopped the lesson I remembered that it's all in here. Windows, rendering, lighting. It's not where you'd expect to find it. And there is a little button called fog. I've lost it now. Where's it gone? Oh no, here we go. Go and click on environment here in the lighting tab of all places. And in here we can do things like we can get rid of the sky box. So if we wanted to, we could get rid of the sky background. We could just make it black. You've got shadows here, that black. You've got extra lighting coming from the environment, which we can change to make that just plain whites instead of using the skybox. But down here is fog, and you can make it greater or less, but I'm just going to tick it off because it's just getting in the way. And there we go. Now our scene's looking a little bit more normal. Also, it's revealed just how dark all the blacks are as well. So we'll go with it for now because that's kind of typical of a stage. If you turned off all of your lights on stage, it would look black. So there we go. We've also got some reflections in here. Look, we want to make this custom just to turn that off, because otherwise what it's doing is it starts reflecting things that aren't part of the scene. So we actually you see all this blue here that's reflecting off the back. That's coming from the skybox. It's coming from the sky, even though we're inside the building. It's automatically processing that. So if you put that to custom, it just turns all that off, and then the reflections would hopefully come from the lighting inside the scene rather than the environment around it. So it's kind of useful that I had to go in there because I've got to show you those little things. So we've now got our scene. It's looking quite dark in here. So maybe let's just turn up our environment lights so we can see clearly. We've got a directional light here. Let's just turn up the intensity quite a bit. There we go. So now we can see it better. And you see what I've been doing. We've finished applying textures to all of our metalwork at the back. We've put in all the LED panels, and I have created the yellow. I was just struggling to randomize it, and my OCD was getting annoyed. So we've created a yellow to go with the red, green, and blue. So we've got a random set of colours at the back. So that's quite pretty. And when we put that light on quite high, it will start to blow out a little bit. So we can balance that later when we start looking at lighting. What we're doing this time is animating things. So what we want to do is we want to make this set of treads whiz over to here on an animation. Simplest animation you could do, and I'm bound to get it wrong when I explain it to you. So I'm going to go into content, and I'm going to create a new folder called animation. And the reason for putting it there is that I like the idea that all of my content from my show lives inside that folder, so it's easy to find against all the stuff that Unity creates. So animation, we're going to select this object. We're going to right click down here and go create. Where is it? Animation. Call it new animation. We're going to call it tread slide with my camel hump spacing. So yeah, it's just a good idea, or just good practice, not to put spaces and things in game engines, because sometimes code doesn't process spaces. So we just want them all to be one word. Now there's no animation in there at the moment. If we double click on it, we'll see that we've got an animation timeline. Now you can also get to this by going to Windows and Animation. Click on animation here. I like to dock it down the bottom here so it's nice and long, which is kind of helpful. And if we select this object here, it asks us to create something. So we didn't get that before. We click on any object, it'll ask us to create. It will be creating an animation based on that object. So animations can't easily be applied to other objects. There are loads of exceptions to that rule that I just said, but I think what I'm trying to say is work on the object that you need to move, not the others. So I'm going to click create, and I'm going to call it an animation. So I'm saving it in here, my animation. I'm going to call it, what do I call it? Stairs slide. Now I think this is going to create something different to the one I already created. So if we go back into the project window, I've now got two. Yes. So look, I didn't need to create that first one. I just used it to open the window. It didn't carry on working with that one. I should have selected it from here. So if I click on that object, stair slide, because that's now contextual, it relates to the stairs that we're creating, and you can create loads of different clips that you can call up later on. But we're just going to work on this one for now. So it doesn't do anything at the moment. There's nothing to do. If I did anything, it's not creating animations. So what we're going to do is click Add Property. And what we want to do, we want to find the property that we want to animate. In this case, we want to move it in a certain direction on the transform. And that movement is, if I just move this here, I can see the position's moving in the X. So I want to find that property. Add Property. I've got my transform up here. I've got loads of other things. I've got all my materials. And we can animate any of these, all the individual sub-objects. But the transform at the top is the one we're looking at in the window. Transform, position, and I'm going to click plus. And if I open up this, I will see X, Y, and Z. And then the 3.76 is that same value I've got up here. So that's where it is currently. Now, this time slider here is very confusing. It doesn't relate to real world time. It relates to ticks of your computer. And all computers tick at different rates because processors run at different speeds. So a game engine doesn't understand time in most senses. And we're going to cover this a little bit later when we look at Playmaker about how that manages time. It thinks in terms of ticks, and ticks are how many times the processor processes something. So 60 ticks on one computer will be a lot faster or slower than 60 ticks on another computer. So it's just something to think about as we're building this. And you'll see that if I hit play, it's going to whiz through that very quickly, and see it's doing 60 frames there in about a second. So we'll come back to that because there's a way of sorting that out. And actually there is a way of slowing this down anyway in here, but I'll do that later. Now you can also look at this in a curve editor if you prefer curves. It might be a bit easier. But I'm going to start in dope sheets and we'll come back to curves later. You may be experienced with animating, so in which case that's where that is. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a position. We're going to move this across to 30 seconds, or 30 frames rather. And we're going to create a new position here. So I'm just going to move this over. But before I do, I'm going to hit the record button. And what that does, it says anything I do now is going to be saved into this editor. So in theory, when I move this object, it will create some new key points, these sort of diamond shapes here. That says I am doing something different. So let's just grab that in the X. There we go. We're going to move it over, and it's updated all of the X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to move it all the way to there because that's how off stage it's going to go. And then I'll turn that off. And because I've done it in the middle, what should happen is if I go back this side, it will go back to its original place. If I go to the other side of it, it will slide back in again. So I've actually got two animations there, kind of. And that's fine. And if I hit play, look at it go. It just goes on a loop. Now, in order to be able to control this in the scene, we have to do something else to it. So it's created an animator up here. That's turned off for some reason. And we need to apply to it a controller. Now, the controller it's created is central stairs. Now, this will be saved somewhere. Where did it save it to? There. So it's created a controller for the animation. And if I double click on this, it brings up a new window, which looks like this. And we can see here, this is our animation. That's it there, stairs slide. That little symbol there is our animation. So that's this here. And if I did have another one, I could drag it in here, tread, slide, and that would be an animation as well. And in here, we can set things like speeds. So we're running way too fast at the moment. So let's create a speed of 0.1. And what happens when you turn on your game engine, entry is how it starts. So if I had it turned off, if I click here, if this is off, which is how it was set up, entry won't be working. As soon as that turns on, it will activate this, which will instantly turn on our animation, which is going to run for 0.1. And there should be a way of telling it not to loop. And I think it might be if I just make a transition to exit. Let's see if that works. I find there's a bit of a black art, and every time I do it, it seems to work a different way. Avatars don't apply to an animator of an object. It applies to animations of characters, like if you're using motion capture data. And apply root motion, we don't need to worry about that. That's make sure that something is moving in relationship to its root. So like if I had a human character moving, if that was turned off as it is at the moment, you'd see them running, but they'd be running on the spots. Whereas if you put on apply root motion, you see them running away from that point. So that's what that is. Now, if I hit play, in theory, this will activate the animator, and we should see that staircase start to move. It'll probably load up my game window. I don't know where the camera is. Yeah, it's gone. Oh, there we go. Let's jump over there. So there we go. So it's moving. It's moving at a nice speed now as well. And what's interesting, when it gets to the end there, it jumps. So why is it doing that? If we go to the animation here, we should see that moving. No, we're not. If we click on the animator, we should see it processing it. We can see the object moving there. So what's happening is my animation's too short, maybe. Speed's at 0.1. Ah, right, so the entry is kicking in again. So something's odd there. So let's just, just for the sake of getting this going, we're just going to speed this up. So hopefully it will get to the end. No, it's kicking in a new one before it's had a chance to finish. Just put that back to 0.1. So anyway, something odd's happening there. I'll have a look at that and work out why that's happening, which is forcing the entry to start it again before it's had a chance to finish. But I'm not too worried, because we're going to look at later on in lesson chapter 6 how to manage this with Playmaker. So we'll create a button that actually opens and closes these using this animation we've built. So I'm not worried that it's not working quite right at the moment, because we won't be using the animation controller. What I would like to do is the same thing for the other side. So I'm going to click on this one, go to my animation. You see now it doesn't have an animation loaded. If I click back on this one, I can see the one we had. Here's the new one. So I'm going to click create. I'm going to call this one, well, I should have named them stage left and stage right, shouldn't I? Stage left slide. Okay, and then I'm going to add the same property, which is a transform of position. Click on the plus sign. I'm going to move it to 30 frames. And I'm going to click the record button, move it out to about there. Click off the record button, and then you'll see I've now got another. Oh no, I haven't. Where is it? Stage left. Yeah, I've now got another animation in there. An animation controller that is. So let's put that one back to 0. Let's go into the new animation controller. Stage left slide. So that's 0.1. And now in theory, let's just dock the game mode there so we can see it. If I open play, that should make that one move as well. There we go, opening and closing together. It's kind of neat. But we're going to have a little fiddle with that later on in Playmaker. And it's out of sync. So that's funny, one of them's moving at the right speed and one of them isn't. I wonder what's causing that. Is that one coming in? That one comes in nice and gently all the way. Okay, so let's try and diagnose this. Let's try and work out what's going on. That's interesting. So let's go to animation. We're going all the way to here, and then it's jumping. What is causing that? And what is the difference between that and this one, which is doing exactly the same thing? It's curious, isn't it? So is this one started at the right place? Yes, it goes to the middle, goes to the end. And for some reason, it is... Oh, maybe it's because I turned it on to start with. Let's have that one turned on at the beginning. So the animator's turned on. Let's hit play. If you feel like I don't know what I'm talking about when I'm doing things like this, if you watch any YouTube video of people working in Unity, this is their lives, just trying to find things out whilst they're teaching. No, it's still doing it. Okay, I'm going to have a look at that later, but I'm not too worried, as I said, because we're going to sort that out in Playmaker later on. But that's kind of the principle of animating. It's you manipulate those objects, and you can do that to anything. You can do that to colours. So if I clicked on one of my materials up here, I'm going to select this material, go to my animation timeline, create, call that color matte, and then add the property. I'm not going to do the transform. This time I'm going to do my material emission color, and then I should have XYZ for emission. So if in theory, if I start fiddling around with these, I could actually change it in here. So I hit record. I could change my emission color to, there we go, pink. And when I hit play, that's going to change those colors. And I don't know if we're seeing anything in there. Yeah, you can see it there. We've got some very funny color going on. So, you know, you can do this to anything that you want to animate, as an example. But we don't want that right now. And I think it's enough for you to get on with just knowing how to make things animate in a very simple way. The animation controller takes a bit of head to get around the animator, because you've got animations, animators, and then there's animator nodes built into the objects as well as components. So there's quite a lot to get your head around there, but that's why we're not going to go into detail. I've just shown you how to get something working, and that's enough for today. Right, in the next lesson, we're going to start lighting the scene, and we're not going to be using moving lights in DMX. We're going to be treating this as a visualization. So if you're a set designer and you want to see how something's going to look, you're going to put some light on it to give some context. That's what we're going to do. So I'll see you in the next lesson when we talk about lighting.